Welcome back to the shop. Picking up right where we left off in the last video, we're going to be testing the rear steer system today. So this will be the first time that the system for the rear steer is all hooked up. Finally got those hoses made and installed and ready to go. Got a few things that I need to test. You can wire the rear steer system to steer however you want, where like left, it moves the tires left versus, left makes the rear go like turn left, like the buggy turn left. What makes the most sense to me is just left is the tires going left. So we'll get that squared away and then calibrate the self-centering as well as get the toe figured out and the toe set right in the back. So stick around, that's what we're doing today. So I want to test the rear steer. So this is the reservoir for the rear steer. It's a totally separate system from the front steering. You can see the reservoir just goes on this little body panel here. I might end up having to take this off to get the rest of the body panels in, but I'm gonna try to put it in now so I can put fluid in it. Well, I'm gonna have to trim this a little bit. Right up here, where the weldment and the bracket for the computer wiring is hitting a little bit. So it probably just fit before, and then now with the powder coat, just a little bit too much. Could probably get it to go, but trimming it a little bit will make it fit better. So. Yeah, it's just this top edge right here between these two holes. So I'll just take a grinder and trim that down a little bit. Let's see if it fits a little better now. All right, there that is installed. I'll get the hose hooked up. I don't have these screws all the way tight yet. I'm gonna go get a thread chaser and run that through there because it's binding a little bit on where the powder coat's stuck into the threads a little bit on the backside. So clean that up a little, tighten this down, and then I'll get the hose on there. Should be pretty close. And then after that, we can start getting it filled up with fluid and see if we can't get the rear steer tested. All right, so there's a few things that I need to test. All right, I got the battery hooked up. Obviously there's air in the system, so we gotta purge the air out. It's not gonna be steering until we get all that air out.
All right.
I got the pump filled up and the reservoir filled all the way up. I know that that's full because it overflowed. And that little, I opened that, cracked that little plug there to vent air out.
Okay.
So there's a few things that need to be tested here. So first of all, as soon as I turn everything on, I need to make sure that, like as soon as I arm the rear steer system, I need to make sure that my self-center disable switch is in the right position. I don't remember because I don't want it to be self-centering right away.
Okay.
So I'll probably start off holding the trigger for the self-center disable, and then I'll let go and pull it real quick just to make sure that if it starts doing stuff.
Yeah.
If it starts doing stuff, then I need to flip that switch.
Okay.
So that's the first thing. Then, go left and see if it steers left after we purge the air and stuff. Mm-hmm. Go right, see if it steers right. But then we also need to test, after I go right, is the rear steer wiring, sensor wiring hooked up
Correct.
right also?
Yeah, right.
So those are the things that can go wrong. We can, steer left and it is actually going right, and then we can steer left and then the auto self.
Rear steer isn't confusing enough already.
So steer left. Hold on. So
Right,
it could go steer left, but it's really going right. That's one way that's one failure mode. The other failure mode is, which that's just a personal preference thing. But the thing that I need to be careful of is if we turn it to the left with the self-centering disabled and the sensors are backwards, then it will turn left more and pin it left.
Right.
So that's what I need to avoid.
Yeah.
That's the first thing we need to test after we establish that the self-centering is disabled right now.
Right.
We want to start off disabled.
Okay.
All right, so the electronics are on. I got the battery, charger hooked up. The other thing I'm going to test is how much power it's drawing too, but we'll worry about that later.
Yeah.
All right, so.
Anything you need me to do?
I don't think so.
Just
watch and enjoy.
watch.
Or see if something's leaking, you know, if something leaks or.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to go master on. The rear steer is not armed, so this shouldn't do anything.
Okay.
Okay, now I'm going to arm the rear steer system, so I'm pulling the trigger. Okay, now I'm going to let go of the trigger to see if my self-centering disable seems like it's off. Okay. That does sound like it's flicking, so that doesn't sound good. Let me see. Okay, that should be self-center disabled.
Okay.
I think it happened to be in the center.
Yeah, right.
So, all right, so I'm going to try and steer left. And then let me just get my bearings here in case something goes wrong. What can I flip, switch off?
Master switch.
Yeah. Okay, sounds like it's doing something. So I'm going left.
Okay.
It's working! It's working!
So we got it backwards,
Yeah.
at least for my preference.
Yeah. Now try the self-centering and see which way it goes.
Yeah, so we're just a little bit to the right, right? Okay, self-centering is enabled. I'm holding the switch. So, okay, self-centering, still not going yet.
Didn't work. Yeah.
Let's go further. Okay, letting go again. Okay, something's wrong with the self-centering.
Try the switch the other way.
Cool. It's doing stuff. I need to figure out why the self-centering's not working. Might be that these sensors are just not pushed down all the way
Yeah.
or plugged in. Oh, I didn't plug them in yet. That's why. I just had them sitting here.
That'll work a lot better plugged in.
I defeat myself sometimes. I didn't want to have that plugged in so it wouldn't go crazy.
Right.
All right, I'm going to disarm the rear steer while we plug those in, just in case. Okay, rear steer disabled, verifying that it doesn't work. Okay, my arm works. Now let's plug these in and see which way they're set up. Okay, holding the trigger, arming, letting go of the trigger. Okay, and now holding the trigger, enabling the self-centering, and letting go. Sick.
Perfect.
So I got the left-right backwards. The self-centering is correct, though.
Yeah.
I think.
So cycle it both ways all the way. Or close to all the way.
I can't see what all the way is, so you'll have to. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
you
what the
can
self-centering.
see the tire on your link there, so.
Okay.
So that's pretty close.
Am I hitting the knuckle yet? Like where the knuckle?
No.
Okay, so
You
it's
got
still
about a
got more.
half inch to hit the stop
Okay.
there.
Does everything look good here?
Yeah.
Okay. No leaks or anything. All right, I'm gonna turn the self-centering back on.
You want to go a little farther?
I don't know which way. I gotta turn it, hold on. It's backwards, so.
Oh, yeah, it's backwards,
right.
so. Still more, more, more.
It's touching over here.
Okay. It's got about 1/8 of an inch to go before hitting the stop.
Yeah, the tire and on the link though is what's
Yeah,
hitting over here.
Right. So we got to do something about that to set a stop so you don't get into that, because that's too far.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Busted Knuckle has these things that go on here
Yeah.
and cause the clevises to bottom out before. So maybe I'll call Trey.
Yeah, we'll
See
have
what-
to get some of those because you don't want that to go into your, that'd start tearing stuff up, you know.
Yeah, the tire more than anything, but
Yeah.
yeah. All right, watch out. I'm gonna turn on the
Yep, go.
self-centering.
Okay.
That is so cool.
Try it all the way that way. Wait. Okay, you're into the tire again over there and not on the stop. So yeah, we definitely got to get those stops.
That is so cool. So the self-centering's not even adjusted yet. It looks like it's pretty close though.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit turned that way. Because I gotta, you know, this is all adjustable here. I gotta adjust that. So maybe you can help me adjust that then.
Yeah.
Do you think it looks straight?
Um,
Maybe it doesn't need adjustment. It's good right where it's at, maybe.
hang on a second.
Which way was it? Do I need
It
to
was
come
too
this
far
way?
that way. So you would need to,
Lengthen it. Don't worry. No matter what decision we go with, it'll be the wrong direction the first time.
well, what I'm thinking is if you make it,
So which way was it? Too far this way?
yeah, so it was too far long.
Because it's on the back side of the knuckle.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's in between there. I can feel it. That's convenient. See, these sensors is just ball bearings that push down on the metal
Oh, right,
log
yeah.
that's in there, so I can feel when it's in between. Mm-hmm. So that's adjusted. Let's see if it worked. Still looking like it's lined up?
Yeah, I think it's a little too far the other way.
You said to go that far. I'd go more, he says.
Yeah, you have to bring it back a couple turns.
The other thing we might be able to do too is tighten these.
Be tight.
Well, if you go too tight, then it'll do this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it needs to be like just the right amount of tight.
Yeah.
Hold on. Before you do that, let me just tighten this down and see if it will go any further. Because the tighter that is, the more it pushes down the ball bearing and it tightens up the clearance of this whole situation. Watch your hands and feet and stuff
Yeah,
in
I'm
case
good.
it starts steering.
Yeah. I don't know what too tight is, though.
Neither do I.
no.
Let me steer it.
Yeah.
Watch your hands and feet.
Yep.
Okay, self-center disabled for now.
Okay. It is centered, though. I mean,
Yeah,
it's in its centered position.
it's in its center position,
What do
yeah.
you think it looks like now?
I don't know, it looks pretty close to me. If you look at it though. This tire looks worse than the other tire. So that one looks straight, this one looks canted, so I need to fix the toe on that. So the toe is screwy.
Yeah, this one's in a little bit. This one looks, hang on, let me get my level.
Yeah, this one's good. I need to fix the toe on the
Or,
other one. Yeah, the toe is way off on this. Should we just use my laser?
okay, so that's the way that one's pointed. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that one's definitely this way
Yeah.
compared to the other one.
So we just need to go back like a turn or two.
Well, And I need to fix the toe, first of all. The toe is wrong. So we're like this right now. I'm doing that exaggerated.
Yeah, but I think before you do that, though, shouldn't we get one of them straight? Then you can straighten the other one.
Straighten the other one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that would work. Yeah, because I'm not going to toe, like, it's going to be straight toe. I'm not going to toe it in either. Or if we were towing it in or out, then we would have to get them both done at the same time, you know?
Right.
But since this is the back, it's just going to be straight toe.
Right.
This is bugging me. I want them to be clocked the same.
And you get on me about the light switches being the same direction.
Yeah. Such is the way, I guess.
Okay, ready for another test.
All right, it might be off again because I just tightened that down, so we'll see.
Just turn it on and let it self-center if it will and see how far it goes.
I'll cycle it again.
That kind of sort of almost line up with that front tire?
Well, the front tire's turned.
Yeah, but I mean...
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
I'll have to just drive it around, see if it drives straight. It
What's
looks
that?
pretty straight. We'll have to just drive it around and see if it feels like it's driving straight.
Yeah.
Hold on, let's laser up. See if we can get anything more accurate with the laser.
I mean, you could try to line it up so it's shooting right down here and see where it lands. But I don't know as that'll really tell us a whole lot either.
Yeah, that'll just tell you how straight or not this bar is. Remember,
Yeah.
I made this bar.
Right.
I don't know if that's a good straight reference.
Yeah. So looking down it this way to the inside of the tire, this one looks straight. That one looks like it's got to go out just a hair. I think this one's towed in just a bit.
Yeah, I hadn't even jammed these tight yet because I knew we were going to have to adjust this. So which way?
You want to get shorter.
It's obviously going to be hard to turn without the wheels being jacked up.
That's the right way.
This way? Yeah.
I think that's probably enough,
You think?
according to my micrometer. I mean, you look at it and see what you think, but I think it's pretty close.
Hold on, I need to tighten this.
Yeah.
Because that's threaded, it's threaded on this side too. And it's an interference fit, so it's tight. Doesn't even really need the jam nut because of that, but. So, maybe from this angle? From that angle, okay. Oh, that's good.
Okay.
All right,
Now,
see. Yeah.
Self-center.
See where the toe is and stuff.
Right. We need to, since we've done both of them, recenter it. That side still looks pretty good. Now this side's towed out.
And for the camera, yes, we know we can take the wheels off and put one of those metal things on there and get it measure from side to side, but it's not that important. It's getting in the ballpark. Spends its whole life off-road. Hold on, towed.
Now you want to get long.
Get longer?
Longer, yep. Because you want to shove the back of the wheel out.
More?
Tiny bit more, yeah. One more. That's pretty close right there.
That's perfect because the B Corps logo is lined up just right.
Huh?
Because the B Corps logo is lined up just right now. B Corps logo.
Aha. Out at the end of the level, I mean.
All right. Cycle it one more time, and then I'm gonna see what kind of power this thing draws. And we gotta flip the wires. Let me do that now. Okay, wires flipped. That's how fast it is to do that. Ooh, something's wrong now.
Uh-oh. What?
We gotta flip the self-centering now too, I think.
Oh, yeah. Can you just flip those back here?
Yeah, that's supposed to be centering and it's not. Yeah, flip those for me. Okay. So that is, yeah, that's the way I want it to go. Now I'm just playing around.
Ah.
Actually,
good?
yeah, I'm gonna do that, but let's put my amp clamp on there and see what kind of power it's drawing. So it's about 170 amps.
Yeah.
I'll have to look at my charts and see if this wire is enough. I think it's 4 gauge. We didn't have any specs on, the documentation didn't have any specs on how much this motor draws.
Yeah.
So I had to just figure it out. So 170 amps, wow.
Well, how much does a starter draw?
Hundreds.
100 a starter draw?
Hundreds.
Oh, hundreds.
Multiple hundreds,
Ah,
yeah. Thick. Rear steering.
Full.
Something like that, yeah.
So you're good?
Right, rear steer is
Steering.
engaged. That is awesome. We'll have to do the same thing to the front as far as the toe. That'll probably be the last thing for the steering. It doesn't look like it's leaking. It's the next day. Rear steer is fully functional. That was the first time that we had the whole system hooked up. Up until now, it was just mock-up, even before powder coat. I still didn't have the hydraulic hoses until just recently to be able to hook it up, so went pretty good. I'll show you what I was doing. There's a few different things that I was messing with at various times. The first was I have 2 switches here. One that just arms the rear steer system entirely, and then the other one I'll get to in a second. But what the joystick does, I talked about this in a previous video, but this is a kit that Busted Knuckle makes, Busted Knuckle Off-Road, that's what the logo is. You can buy this whole kit basically, which comes with the rear steer log, which is the sensor for the auto self-centering, comes with the pump and this joystick, and the wiring to control it all. So I made some custom brackets, obviously on the back for the log, but other than that, you can pretty much adapt this to whatever you want. The way it's controlled is there's a little joystick on top here that goes left and right, and you can, that commands the steering, the pump, to turn on in pump in one direction or the other, and it plumbs hydraulic fluid to one side of the ram or the other to make it steer. Now you can hook it up however you want. Some people like steering to the left would make the vehicle turn left, which would actually make the back steer to the right. But to me, because that would be confusing to me, like if you were going backwards and you needed to use the rear steer, then everything's all turned around. So to me, or if you just don't want to, like in rock crawling, you might not want to use the rear steer to turn sharp. You might need to crab the back end over, so you can stay in a better orientation on like a side hill or something. But so to me, it makes more sense that, left makes the tires go left. So I had it hooked up backwards the first time. There's really no way to know, like I didn't know, which of these relays on which side of the pump is right and left. The wiring is all, it says, right and left, but obviously you don't really know until you actually try it. But it's easy enough to switch. So these little wires here go out to the relays, and it's easy enough to just flip those. So I did that during the testing. It only took, a few minutes to do that. So I had that flipped, and then flipping that, I ended up having to flip the rear steer because the rear steer was back. The rear steer sensors were backwards now relative to that being flipped. So I didn't think about that, but I'm glad I caught it because it kept steering hard over, and I caught it before it got all the way to the stop, which is good. Now with the trigger, so this is, steer left, and when the self-centering is turned on, steer left. When you let go, that's when it activates the self-centering. So basically, the logs on the we were adjusting is connected to the knuckle, and when it senses that, it's steered, it'll command the opposite steering to make it come back to the center until it turns off both sensors. When it's on, it'll just automatically do that. So it'll steer to the left, and then when you let go, it'll immediately come back steering to the right, and that's what I was doing at various points. I was letting it self-center so we can calibrate the positioning. But it also has a momentary here, which just stays activated when you're holding it. And that allows you to momentarily stop the self-centering. So if you have this pulled while you're turning one way or the other, when you let go, it'll stop in that position and it will not self-center. But you have to hold it like this if you want to keep it in that position. When you let go, it will turn the self-centering back on and it'll come back to center. That's where this other switch comes into play, which is a switch. It's got a little pigtail wiring harness that I've wired into. I made the wiring harness myself and just wired it kind of into the wiring for this joystick. Busted Knuckles sells that too if you want that feature. They actually sell a little pigtail that does that, but I just made it myself. So what that switch does is it enables and disables the self-centering feature. So you can flip that switch, toggle switch, and then now the self-centering is completely disabled. So you can, steer, and then when you let go of everything, it'll stay steered, which I figured would be a handy feature in certain situations. If you're rock crawling, you want to go real slow or something around an obstacle, it would be handy to just leave the tires steered. And then when you're ready to go back to self-centering, you just flip the switch and it'll do that. So that's what we were messing with basically, is, getting all that, tested, functioning wiring-wise, because some of that is my wiring, and then also calibrating the toe and the positioning of the self-centering. And then here's another view at the log. There's two sensors in here, and then inside of this log, there's a little shuttle that connects to this cable out to the knuckle. So that's what we were adjusting, is the length positioning of this. That little heim on the end is adjustable in and out to get the shuttle positioned in the center when the wheels are pointed in the right direction. And the other thing we were adjusting is just the toe, which it's the same way on a lot of production vehicles. You have, this tie rod here that connects obviously production vehicles aren't hydraulic steering, but it's the same principle basically. You can adjust the toe of the tire because this little tie rod here has one right hand heim joint thread and one left hand thread. So when you turn the tie rod itself, it makes the whole thing longer or shorter depending on which way you turn it. So that's what you saw me doing in the video. All right, so that'll probably do it for this one. This video is starting to get long. So there we have it. Rear steer is hooked up fully, functional, tested, works. Man, that's pretty cool I've never had a vehicle with rear steer. I mean, how often do you have something like that? So obviously we'll have to do all kinds of playing around with that. Every gag thing that you can do with rear steer, like, turn really tight, point both tires in the same direction and crab and do all that kind of stuff. So once we get test driving, that's one of the things that we'll be playing with. I think one thing I do want to do though, Dad mentioned it in the video at some point while we were putting it all together, that I'm gonna have to do something about stops. So the tire hits the link before the knuckle hits the stop on the steering. So the knuckle is capable of steering further than the tire will allow, essentially. So I'll have to figure out something to do about that. The stops aren't adjustable. Sometimes those stops have like a screw jam that you can like lengthen so it hits the stop earlier. But I think what I'm gonna have to do is get some kind of, I'll show you. Is get some kind of a slug that'll slip on here and be whatever length to jam the ram against the clevis before the tire hits the bottoms out. So probably end up having to do something like that. See, this is where it jams. So you see no adjustability there, it just hits the knuckle, or hits the C, the inner C on the axle. So that's something I'll have to mess with, but I'll just, in the meantime, like for testing and stuff, I'll just have to be a little careful. So what's next? I don't even know. Probably seats, passenger seat. I'm looking at it. Floor pans on the passenger side. Maybe we'll put the skid plates on and charge the shocks. That'll be a cool moment. Once those shocks are charged, it's basically ready for test rip. So that's upcoming. I don't know if it's gonna be the next video, probably the next couple videos, but stick around, we're gonna be driving it soon. Thanks for watching.